In a tall house in a yard of thistles, 11 girls wake on the floor of 11 bedrooms. They yawn, press their foreheads to window panes. Up and down the surrounding blocks, terrace houses stand in 4- and 5-story rows. In some, roofs have collapsed. In others, facades have crumbled away to reveal inner beams, empty rooms, green pools of rainwater. A 3-year-old named Anita Weiss calls hello down the stairwell, twice, 3 times. 1 story below, another girl replies. 2 older girls go from floor to floor collecting everyone. 5-year-old Iluka Kroner, 8-year-old Bela Kohn, Inga Hoffmann and Hannelore Goldschmidt, and her older sister, Regina. Nearsighted Elsa Dessau. Downstairs they find no furniture, no toilets, no doors on the cupboards, no draperies over the windows. What is this place? They said there would be promenades, gardens. The youngest peer out into the thistles. The oldest frown and search their memories. Several sense something recently settled there, something ghastly, something that might come alive if they poke at it too much. 9-year-old Hannelore Goldschmidt treads down the staircase. She scans the faces in the parlor. Where's Esther? Is Esther here? No one answers. Several of the girls glance continually toward the doorways, expecting Frau Cohen with her house dress and apron to stride in and clap her hands and make an announcement. But Frau Cohen does not come through the doorway. The last to come downstairs is 16-year-old Miriam Ingrid Bergen. She walks to the front door and opens it and stands looking out. No entryway, no front walk, no paths trampled through the thistles. Miriam turns. "We are dead," she says. "I'm sure of it." Esther Gramm is born in 1927 in Hamburg, Germany. Her mother's labor is long and harrowing. For several minutes, Esther is trapped inside the birth canal without oxygen. Her mother dies of complications. Esther is left with a 1/4-inch scar inside her left temporal lobe. Her father drowns in a canal 4 years later. Esther is bundled across the city at night. The Hirschfeld Trust Girls' Orphanage at number 30 Papendamm is a 5-story row house in a middle-class Jewish neighborhood. In its dormitories, a dozen girls sleep on folding cots. They wear matching black stockings and shin-length dresses. They walk to gymnastics class on Tuesday evenings, weave matzah baskets on Thursday evenings. Every morning, the house directress, Frau Cohen, listens to the girls read in synchrony from donated readers. Esther has been at number 30 Papendamm for a year when she begins having temporal lobe epileptic seizures. She smells an overwhelming odor of celery when none is present. She stands in the parlor downstairs, and a sense of impending annihilation swamps her, and for a full minute she cannot respond to anything anyone says to her. Months later, when Esther is 6, she is sitting in the washroom in a chair beside the 3 iron bathtubs, waiting her turn for a bath, when she hears what sounds like a steam engine rumble to life in the distance. Within seconds, the train sounds as if it has drawn close enough to explode through the wall. None of the other girls glance up. Frau Cohen carries in a stack of folded nightdresses, her sleeves rolled up, 3 strands of hair hanging over her eyes. She looks at Esther and tilts her head slightly. Her mouth moves, but no sound comes out. Esther clamps her palms over her ears. The train roars as if through the throat of a tunnel. Any second it will be upon her. Any second she will be crushed. Then the train passes through her head. Here is what the other girls see. Little Esther slips off the chair in the corner, lands on her side on the tile, and starts convulsing. Her wrists curl inward. Her eyes blink a dozen times a second. Here is what Esther sees. An unfurnished room. The train is gone. The girls are gone. Hirschfeld House is gone. Violet, snow-refracted light washes through 2 windows. A man and woman sit cross-legged on the floor. "First we die," the woman says, "then our bodies are buried. So we die 2 deaths." Esther can feel distantly that her body is kicking. "Then," continues the woman, "in another world, folded inside the living world, we wait. We wait until everyone who knew us when we were children has died. And when the last one of them dies, we finally die our 3rd death. That's when we're released to the next world." In the Hirschfeld house bathroom, one of the girls screams. Frau Cohen drops the stack of night dresses. Maybe 9 seconds pass. Esther wakes up. 75 years later, 81-year-old Esther Graham finds herself flat on her back in her garden in Geneva, Ohio. She is a widow, a grower of prize-winning carrots, and a mildly celebrated illustrator of children's books. She lives alone in a pale blue ranch house on 13 acres of maples and poplars, 4 miles from Lake Erie. She has lived here for 50 years. Esther's son and his wife live next door in a white colonial on the other side of a wall of willows. 4 days ago they flew to Changsha, China, to adopt twin girls. But there have been visa problems, an unexpected bungling of documents. Suddenly everything is in question. They've told their 20-year-old son, Robert, a college junior home for the summer, that they may have to remain in China for several weeks. Esther's left hand is clamped in her grandson's right. Her whole body, even the backs of her hands, is damp with sweat. 4 this week, Robert says. He helps her to her feet. "We're going to the hospital." "No." Esther shuts her eyes. They feel strangely untethered. "No hospital." She leans on him as they cross the lawn. He lays her on her couch. "I saw it again," she whispers. "A tall house in a yard of thistles." "It was a seizure, Grandmom," Robert says. "You were only out for 9 seconds. I timed it, start to finish. You were in the garden the whole time." "It felt like hours," Esther mumbles. "It felt like all day." They eat scrambled eggs in the dimness of the kitchen. Robert says, "Promise me, if you have 1 more, we'll go." Esther looks over at him. Robert has been recording interviews with Esther over the past several weeks for reasons she doesn't fully understand. Something to do with history classes in college. A thesis, he calls it. "Okay," she says. "I promise." Robert walks home. Esther feels her way down the hall and climbs into bed fully clothed. Her brain swings and bangs inside her skull. These past weeks she has been sensing shapes flowing beneath the objects of her room. She has heard violin music sifting out through the backyard trees, and she was certain for a long moment that she could sense a silvery, restless world rippling just beneath this one. Now in her bedroom at 9 p.m., with the lamp extinguished beside her, streams of unbidden memories rise, decades old, deeply buried. She hears the bustle and rush of Hirschfeld House. Every Sabbath for 11 years, Esther used to take her place at the long refectory table and look from the backs of her hands to the backs of the hands of the other girls, Miriam and Regina and Hannelore and Elsa, arrayed around the table in prayer. Time compresses. Esther blinks into the darkness and wonders for a long moment if she is no longer in Ohio at all, but back inside the row house at number 30 Papendam, more than half a century ago. A dozen girls on 2 benches, a dozen young hearts thrumming beneath their sweaters, 3 blue street lamps swaying in the wind outside the windows. 2 weeks after the seizure in the bathroom, Esther has another. Dr. Rosenbaum prescribes a bitter-smelling anticonvulsant called phenobarbital. Esther is supposed to swallow 6 drops 3 times a day. The drug works. Her moods stabilize. Her mind does not derail. Miriam Ingrid Bergen, a long-waisted 7-year-old with a delicate chin and a penchant for risk, takes Esther under her wing. She shows her where Frau Cohen keeps her tobacco and which bakeries will hand out scraps of dough. Esther spends much of the rest of her time drawing. She sketches 50-story bell towers, torch-lined tunnels, bridges made from thread, strange amalgamations of imagination, and what feels peculiarly like memory. She turns 7. She turns 8. 1 month, it seems, no one in Hamburg is wearing armbands, and the next month, practically everyone is. Boys from other neighborhoods march past Hirschfeld House and yell crude songs up at the windows. Frau Cohen is spat on as she waits in a queue to buy cheese. Citizenships are being revoked, Frau Cohen tells the Hirschfeld girls as they sew a thicker set of drapes for the dormitory windows. The directors say we need to start preparing for Auswanderung. Auswanderung? It means emigration. To Esther, the word evokes images of butterfly migrations, desert nomads rolling up tents, the long unpinned chevrons of geese that pass over the house in autumn. The Hirschfeld girls are given English lessons, Dutch lessons, comportment lessons. Esther and Miriam hold hands between their cots in the winter darkness, and Esther whispers destinations into the space above their beds. "I hope," Esther says, "we are sent together." Only children from the same family, Miriam says, get sent together. On Esther's 9th birthday, Dr. Rosenbaum arrives with 9 pencils wrapped in ribbon. "Growing up so tall," he marvels. He replenishes Esther's bottle of anticonvulsant. He asks her a series of questions about her latest illustrations. At dinner, all the girls sit as close as they can to Dr. Rosenbaum's wife, a tiny woman with bright silver hair who smells of cashmere and perfume. She tells the girls about bridges over the Arno, apiaries in the Luxembourg Gardens. After the meal, everyone gathers in the parlour. Violin music whispers out of the big radiola 5. Frau Rosenbaum describes the November light in Venice, how it simultaneously hardens and softens everything. Esther closes her eyes. She sees archways, canals, staircases coiling around mile-high towers. She sees a man and a woman crouched in front of a window, cross-hatchings of snow falling beyond the glass. When she opens her eyes, a crow is sitting on a branch just outside the window. It turns an eye toward her, cocks its head, blinks. Esther walks toward it, sets her palm against a pane. Does she see it? Just there, something glowing between its feathers, some other world folded inside this one. The crow flaps away. The branch bobs. Frau Rosenbaum murmurs another story. The girls sigh and giggle. Esther looks out into the night and thinks, we wait until everyone who knew us when we were children has died. "81-year-old Esther wakes at 6 a.m. and has to lean against the wall as she walks to the bathroom. Her whole house seems to sway back and forth, as though in the night someone has towed it 4 miles north and set it adrift upon the swells of Lake Erie. A train roars to life in the distance. Esther kneels, then falls onto her side. She seizes. In something like a dream, Esther watches Miriam Ingrid Bergen lead Hannelore Goldschmidt up the stairwell of a tall, narrow house. 3 flights, 4 flights. The rooms they pass have nothing in them. At the top of the stairwell, Miriam pushes through a trapdoor into an attic. From twin hexagonal windows in the dormers, they peer out. "Is this Hamburg?" whispers Hannelore. Miriam doesn't answer. She is looking at a distant building, perhaps 20 stories tall, the tallest building she can see. From its roof, a steel lattice radio antenna anchored with guy wires rises still higher. At At its very summit, a single green beacon flashes. "Where is everybody?" asks Hannelore. "I don't know," says Miriam. Esther wakes up. She has another generalized seizure in her bathroom at noon, and a third in the kitchen around dusk, each time she sees the girls she lived with as a child. After dark, Esther finds herself in her bed, not entirely sure how she got there. Out her window, clouds blow past stars. On their huge undersides, she imagines she can see the reflected wash of an antenna beacon as it flashes green, green, green. Autumn in Hamburg 1937, and the house martins depart for the Sahara. The storks, Dr. Rosenbaum has told Esther, will travel all the way to South Africa, while all through the country, Jewish people are hurrying north in the opposite direction, toward the ports. Signs sprout outside the butcher's, outside the theatre, outside Schlosser's restaurant, always painted in the same trim calligraphy. Juden sind hier unerwünscht. No walks for pleasure, no smiling, no eye contact. These rules are not written down, but they might as well be. Esther is 10 when the first emigration letter arrives. The elders have arranged for Nancy to be emigrated to Warsaw, Frau Cohen announces. Esther imagines grand palaces. She draws street lamps reflected in a river and a four-wheeled carriage pulled by 2 white horses bedecked in bells. A trim driver with a tasseled whip rides on the box, and inside a little girl in long gloves sits behind a veil of silk. 2 dawns later, 14-year-old Nancy Schwarzenberger stands in the hall clutching a cardboard suitcase, nearly as big as she is. She looks as if she cannot make up her mind whether to laugh or to cry. Through the ensuing winter, rumours swirl through Hirschfeld House like tendrils of some invisible gas. The girls hear that all stores owned by Jewish people will be ransacked. They hear the government is preparing a weapon called the secret signal, which turns the brains of every Jewish kid to paste. Frau Cohen starts rationing paper, and Esther has to resort to drawing on the edges of newspapers and in the margins of books. She draws an ogre closing a butterfly net over a platter-sized city. She draws a gargantuan crow crushing row houses in its beak. In November of 1938, Esther and Miriam sit inside the neighbourhood druggist's in a leatherette booth with 3 squares of chocolate between them. It's the first time Frau Cohen has allowed them out of Hirschfeld House in 4 days. An elderly man runs in and claims boys in jackboots and armbands are breaking windows in a shoe shop on Benderstrasse. The drugstore goes quiet. Within 10 minutes, the remaining customers have slipped out. Esther can feel a familiar, slow apprehension coiling itself around her throat. "We should go," she tells Miriam. The overweight druggist sits down in a booth across from Esther and Miriam. His face looks as pale and hard as a pebble of quartz. Every now and then he emits an audible whimper. "Who's he talking to?" Miriam whispers. Esther tugs at Miriam's sleeve. The druggist stares into nothingness. "I hear his family has already left," Miriam whispers. "I don't feel well," Esther says. She takes her bottle of anticonvulsant from her pocket and sets 3 drops onto the back of her tongue. Outside, a gang of boys pedals past, bunched over their bicycles, one trailing a long crimson flag. The druggist's telephone, mounted to the wall behind the counter, rings 5, 6 times. The druggist's attention flips from the telephone to the window. "Why won't he answer the telephone?" whispers Miriam. "We should go," whispers Esther. "Something's wrong with him. Please, Miriam." The phone rings. The girls watch. And as they do, the druggist takes a razor out of his pocket and cuts his own throat. Esther comes to her senses inside the Neurology Center in Cleveland. A plastic EEG recording cap, studded with dozens of wired electrodes, is installed on her head. A nurse in a blue smock tells Esther she has had an absence that lasted almost 3 hours. "But you're here now," she says, and pats the back of Esther's hand. Twice, Robert has long, one-sided telephone conversations with his parents in China. "She's okay, Dad. She's right here. They're doing tests." In the evening, a red-headed neurologist sits beside Esther's bed. The lesion inside Esther's hippocampus, he says, is almost twice as large as the last time they scanned it. They don't know why it's growing, but it's surely responsible for the increased severity of her convulsions. They plan to adjust her medications, increase dosages, introduce neuroactive steroids. They will need to observe her for a week, possibly longer. Esther hears little of this. Everything feels watery and remote right now. The drugs make her feel as if she looks out at her room through flooded goggles. Time drifts. Among the ceiling tiles, she watches barefoot girls shamble along broken streets, the smallest of them tripping now and then because her shoes are too large. They are gradually subsumed by fog and an unwavering internal thudding, whether of Esther's heart or of some intramural hospital machinery, Esther cannot say. Around midnight, Robert leaves Esther and drives 50 miles back to Geneva from Cleveland and sits in his parents' big kitchen, alone. His mother calls from China to say that his grandmother will need things: toothbrush, cholesterol pills, underwear, something to read. "Underwear?" repeats Robert, and his mother, sitting on a folding chair in a government-run transition house in Changsha at 2 p.m., says, "Just do it, Robert." Moths flutter against Esther's porch light. Robert wipes his shoes. He walks through his grandmother's kitchen for perhaps the 1,000th time. But it feels desolate tonight. It feels as if something vital has been stripped out of it. He packs a blouse, some pants, a pair of slippers. On the table beside her bed is a novel, and sticking out of its pages is a sheet of paper the size of an index card. Robert tugs the card free. On one side is a smudged pencil drawing, a house with weeds growing out of its gutters. 5 stories, 2 gables. Around the foundation, more weeds flow outward into a broken, overgrown street. On the other side of the card are the names and birth dates of 12 girls. It looks old. The paper is yellow, the text grey. Name reads the row across the top, then date of birth, date of deportation, and destination. For each name, the dates of deportation and the destinations are the same. The 29th of July, 1942. Birkenau. Robert reads each name, going from top to bottom. Ellen Scheurenberg, Bela Kohn, Regina Goldschmidt, Hannelore Goldschmidt, Anita Weiss, Zita Detmann, Inga Hoffmann, Gerda Koch, Else Dessau, Miriam Ingrid Berger, Esther Grahn. In August of 1939, another Hirschfeld girl, Ella Lefkowitz, is deported to Romania. She is 7 years old. A week later, Matilda Seidenfeld receives her own summons. She is being sent east with a distant uncle to a place called Theresienstadt. 3 new, younger orphans replace the deported girls at number 30 Papendam. 2 of them are infants. Everyone speaks quietly. Up and down Papendam, passers-by glance towards the sky as if being hunted from the air. Germany bombs London. Esther turns 13. She swallows her doses of anticonvulsant. She listens to the distant sounds of ship whistles and the ringing of the harbour cranes. She speaks to Miriam about faraway places. Miriam seldom replies. In September, a newspaper notice demands that all Jewish-owned radio sets must be delivered to collection centres by the 23rd. 2 nights later, the 12 Hirschfeld girls gather in the parlour with Frau Cohen, Dr. and Frau Rosenbaum, and Julius, the old custodian, to listen to one last broadcast on the Radiola 5. State programming plays an opera from Berlin. Frau Cohen mends stockings. Dr. Rosenbaum paces. Frau Rosenbaum sits with her back very straight and closes her eyes for the entire performance. Every now and then she inhales deeply, as if the speaker were emitting some rare fragrance. Afterward, the girls remain seated as Julius unplugs the radiola, loads it onto a dolly, and thumps it down the front steps. In the clinic in Cleveland, Esther drifts through dizzy, medicated hours. The steroids will prevent edema, the neurologist says. The anticonvulsants will prevent more seizures. Robert stands over her at what might be noon of her 3rd day there with a sheet of watercolour paper and a fistful of pencils. All his life they have drawn together. As a boy he'd sit in her lap and they'd draw superheroes, spaceships, pirate galleons. Now Robert pivots his grandmother's eating tray across her midsection. He props up her back with a pillow and fits the arms of her glasses over her ears. It takes Esther a full 10 seconds to coax her fingers into picking up a pencil. Robert watches patiently, standing beside her, his head tilted. With great effort she brings the pencil to paper. In her mind she pictures a white house, 11 girls peering out of 11 windows. She traces a single line across the page. Time passes. She manages another line, then 2 more, a lopsided rectangle. When she holds the paper up to the lenses of her glasses, it's a welter of faint crisscrosses. Nothing resolves out of it. "Grandmom?" asks Robert. Esther looks at him through tears. In the fall of 1941, when Esther is 14 years old, Dr. Rosenbaum misses an appointment with her for the first time. Frau Cohen sends Miriam and Esther to his clinic. The girls walk quickly, fingers interlaced. Every few blocks, Esther swallows back an upsurge of panic. At his little ground-floor clinic, the doctor's bronze nameplate has been prized off the wall. Through a side window, the girls stand between hedges and watch a fumigator pump clouds of gas into what had been his examination room. "They've emigrated," decides Frau Cohen. "They are well-connected people, and it was probably fairly easy for them. They waited as long as they could, and then they fled." She looks Esther in the eye. "Stay busy," she says. "You'll be with us." Esther thinks, he would have told me. He would not have left without telling me. She peers into her jar of phenobarbital. Inside is enough liquid to last maybe 2 weeks. She rations herself to 3 drops a day, then 2, then 1. Unexpectedly, her brain feels quicker, electrified. A night passes in which all she does is draw by candlelight. 20,000 cross-hatchings of pencil, dark cities full of rain, pale figures moving down snowy streets, only a few circles of white on the paper to represent streetlights. Draw the darkness, Esther thinks, and it will point out the light which has been in the paper all the while. Inside this world is folded another. Hour by hour, day by day, her senses sharpen as her moods destabilize. One winter afternoon, when the house seems particularly quiet, more than 9 years since her first generalized seizure, Esther hears a steam engine roar to life in the distance. She stops in the hall at the top of the stairs and clenches her eyes. "No," she whispers. It roars toward her. Hirschfeld House vanishes. Esther walks through a lightless city at nightfall. Soot rains from the sky. Every doorway she passes is crammed with dirty, silent people. Esther wakes at the bottom of the stairs, with a bone sticking out of her wrist. Esther has been at the clinic for 6 days when she asks Robert to take her home. He winces in the corner chair and folds himself over his knees. "I need to get out of here," she says. Robert drags his hands through his hair. His eyes water. "The doctor says it's best if you stay, Grandmom." "I need to be outside," she says. "I need to see the sky." By her 8th day in the clinic, Robert is practically crying as soon as she starts in on him. Robert's parents, he says, have made a breakthrough in China and plan to return home with the twins in 15 days. 15 days isn't long, and they take better care of you than I can. You have to wait till they release you. "They don't grow up," Esther says. "The toddlers stay toddlers. The teenagers stay teenagers." "What toddlers?" "The girls." "That's in your head," Robert says. "The doctor says what you see is only real in your head." "Real in my head?" whispers Esther. "Isn't everything that's real only real in our heads?" "He says without the medications you'll have more seizures. You could die." Esther tries to sit up. "Robert," she says. "Bobby, look at me." Her grandson turns. "Do I look like I have a lot of time left?" The police condemn a Jewish nursing home 4 blocks away. Frau Cohen takes in 20 elderly people. The men cram into the parlor. The women divide themselves between the sewing room and the dormitories. By mid-January, number 30 Papendam brims with people, anxiety, and lice. Esther wakes at night with her wrist throbbing beneath its makeshift splint. Weeks pass without a seizure, then 3 or 4 come in a cluster. When she walks up the stairs, Miriam has to take her elbow. "You're not walking straight, Esther. You keep veering to your left." In the mirror, she is a fragile, sickly creature with outsized eyes. At meals, everyone watches how much Frau Cohen spoons onto plates. Esther can feel the eyes of the men on her as she eats. In her mind, she hears Regina's voice. "They're taking epileptics, too." Robert sneaks Esther out of the clinic in the middle of a thunderstorm. The nurses gather at a window to watch the lightning, and Robert and Esther make straight for the elevator. They ride 6 flights down and walk out the sliding front doors. Robert whispers to himself as he drives. Esther leans her head against the headrest. Her left side buzzes with a curious numbness. The thrill of escaping lingers in her chest. Esther closes her eyes. She sees the blush in Bela Cohn's cheeks from warm bathwater, all her blood vessels open. She sees the egg-shaped face of 2-year-old Anita Weiss turn up to her, eyes shining. She sees the forehead of Regina Goldschmidt bunch into furrows, threatening to tell Frau Cohen about some transgression or another. She sees the quick, busy hands of Hannelore Goldschmidt and the dark, wild beauty of Miriam Ingrid Bergen. She sees Hamburg in the months before they left it, the sense that the city had become a twilit labyrinth, as if the trisecting realities of her life, her drawings, and her seizures had all fused into one. Rain pounds the windshield. The air smells like iron. "Thank you," whispers Esther. "Thank you, Robert." Rationing. Confinement. Miriam and Esther begin spending afternoons in the Hirschfeld house attic, a refuge strung with cobwebs and crammed with ancient donations. Twin hexagonal windows look out over the neighbouring rooftops. In the back of the attic looms a 1/2-ton cedar wardrobe, thick-panelled, painted white. She starts spending whole afternoons up there to kneel in the huge wardrobe and draw labyrinths with the stub of her last pencil onto the smooth white interior panels. It's March when Esther descends into the dining room and sees Dr. Rosenbaum talking with Frau Cohen. He's wearing a brown suit and a maroon tie, and at first glance Esther decides he must not be real. But he is. He's frighteningly thin. He embraces Esther for a long time. From a pocket he withdraws 2 pencils, brand new, bright red. To Esther, their very existence seems almost impossible. She whispers in his ear, "I ran out of medicine." Everybody has run out of everything. He was in a labour camp for nearly a year. They only released him, he says, because he is a doctor. He has not seen his wife in all that time. "Minsk," he mumbles. "They say they sent her to Minsk." Dr. Rosenbaum spends nearly all his time at number 30 Papendam, examining the sick, plucking nits from the children's heads, or sitting in the garden, oblivious to the cold, his big hands in his lap like listless machines. Esther sits with him whenever she can. "Minsk," she whispers. "Do you think she's happy there?" "Happy?" asks Dr. Rosenbaum. He looks down at Esther with a look she cannot understand. It seems part heartache, part wistfulness, part amazement. He pats her head and looks away. The days ratchet past. For Esther, time is beginning to disintegrate. Twice in April she finds herself a block away and cannot remember how she got there. Sometimes she finds Miriam is holding her hand in the attic, or on a bench outside an unfamiliar house. "You wandered off, Esther. You wouldn't listen to me. You kept asking me where you were." Robert makes his grandmother meals, telephones his parents twice daily, and sleeps on Esther's sofa. Occasionally he opens his laptop, intending to work on his thesis, and stares at the screen for a while. Esther seems happier, he thinks, among her houseplants and drawings and tea kettles. In 2 weeks his parents will be home. In a month, Robert will be back at school. 2 days after returning from the clinic, Esther is standing at her bathroom sink when the train roars in the distance. She takes a knee, then lets herself down onto the carpet. In something like a dream, she watches Miriam, Hannelore, and 5-year-old Iluka Kroner walk ruined, buckled streets. Finally, they reach the 20-story building Miriam has been looking for. When the girls look up, they can see a grid of windows narrowing as they rise, and the naked struts of the huge radio antenna ascending into the sky. The stairwell is unlocked and unlit. The entire top story is an expansive square room with no dividing walls. 6 windows on each side look down onto a panorama of the city. In the center of the big room, a chrome broadcast microphone sits in a stand on top of a wooden table. No wires lead from the microphone. Iluka looks up at Hannelore. "What is that?" "It's a microphone." "What's it for?" "For talking to people." "What people?" Hannelore looks at Miriam. Miriam walks barefoot to the table in her ragged dress. She leans over the microphone. She whispers, "Esther?" "I saw Frau Rosenbaum," Esther tells Dr. Rosenbaum. He is sitting in his usual place against the tree in the garden. It's a bright spring day, and several of the people working amongst the seedlings straighten and look over. "I saw her walking through a city." Frau Cohen is washing pots in the corner of the yard. "That's enough, Esther." To Dr. Rosenbaum, she says she doesn't know what she's saying. "They were in a city, but they walked out of the city and through a forest into a valley full of tents. They were all moving toward these tents, and the fabric of the tents was flapping in the wind. Frau Rosenbaum sang, a stone can grow without rain. Love can burn and never end." Emotions are flowing across Dr. Rosenbaum's face like clouds. He is, Esther realizes, clutching her forearm. "Enough, Esther," says Frau Cohen. "Draw it for me," whispers Dr. Rosenbaum. She draws the scene as she remembers it on the interior of the doors of the white wardrobe with her last pencil. She draws a sprawling, smoking city with a harbour on one side and a forest on the other. At the far edge of the forest, she draws hundreds of tents hemmed in by the walls of a valley. Finally, she draws Frau Rosenbaum, a tiny figure in a long procession of pilgrims, silver hair, a long coat, her mouth open in song. After 3 days, Esther calls Dr. Rosenbaum into the attic. He climbs into the wardrobe, knees cracking. With a candle in his fist, he studies the drawings. He moves his face closer. He mutters to himself. After a minute, she sees him extend a long finger and lightly touch the figure of his wife amidst the inch-high rows of pilgrims. She thinks, and when the last one of them dies, we finally die, our third death. When Dr. Rosenbaum climbs out of the wardrobe, he looks at Esther for a very long time. In the morning, he's gone. Around noon every day, Robert escorts Esther to the deck behind her house and sits her down in a patio chair beneath an umbrella. Sometimes Robert reads quietly to her from the newspaper. Sometimes he sketches in a notebook, trees, flowers, things he would not be brave enough to show his friends. And sometimes he sets his little digital recorder in front of her and asks her questions. "Tell me about Grandpa." "Grandpa? Dad's dad." "I was taking tickets at the theater in New Jersey. He kept buying tickets even though he wouldn't go inside to see the show. He was much younger." Robert laughs. "How much younger?" "A few years, I guess, but he seemed so much younger." She is quiet a while. "After the war, it amazed me that the world could still make young people." Robert drapes quilts over her lap, adjusts the umbrella over her head. "I'm studying the war in college." "Last year," Esther says. "Next year, too," he says. "I'm writing a big paper on it." "I remember you didn't like the way they taught it." "At first it was all about armies and treaties and tanks," Robert says. "Churchill, Hitler, Roosevelt, like it was ancient Egypt or something, like it happened a really long time ago." "History," she says. "But you were alive for it. You remember it. That's what my thesis is about, remember?" He waits, but Esther doesn't say anything more. He picks up his little recorder and presses a button and sets it back down. "Were you scared, Grandmom?" "Not of the things you might think." "You mean like dying?" "Yes, like dying." "So what things did scare you?" Esther tugs at her collar. Her glasses are smudged and her mouth is partly open, and Robert cannot tell if she has more to say. In July, 16 more displaced people arrive at Hirschfeld House. None of them seems to know what has happened to Dr. Rosenbaum. The weather turns hot. The house is unbearably crowded and there is not enough food. Toilets overflow, washrooms bulge and reek. Esther turns 15. She feels all the time as if she has some important appointment looming, the details of which she can no longer remember. Often she fails to answer questions that are put to her. More than once, Regina Goldschmidt, directly in front of Esther, asks Frau Cohen to take Esther to the hospital. "We can't keep her here any longer," Regina says. "She's getting worse." Frau Cohen's once thick arms are visibly thinning. Her hair sits across her skull, limp and grey. She clears her throat. "Regina, we can just tell a policeman," Regina says. "Surely he'll help us." "Surely he won't," cries Miriam. "I'll watch her. Let me take care of her." Frau Cohen runs her palms down her apron. She sends the girls away. Miriam and Esther move their cots to the attic. On July the 26th, 403 English aircraft bomb Hamburg at midnight. Miriam and Esther watch from the attic windows. Spotlights spring up from points around the harbour. Hundreds of filaments of red light ascend from hidden gun emplacements. Esther presses herself to the floor. "We should get downstairs," she whispers. Miriam does not take her eyes from the window. "You can go." All through number 30 Papendam, people wake and listen to the sirens and the pounding of the anti-aircraft guns. They troop silently to the cellar and huddle together in the darkness. Esther stays with Miriam. Deliberately, almost lazily, the airplanes descend over the city. Bright streaks of tracer bullets come flashing up from the dark. The airplanes slip lower. They hold formation. At some signal, bombs drizzle out of their bellies all at once. In a blink, thousands of black spots are pouring through illuminated wedges of sky. The bombers scramble. The bombs fall diagonally. Esther thinks, swarms of locusts, flocks of birds. From their dormer windows, the girls watch incendiaries fall through rooftops 20 blocks away. White phosphoric flames flow like water into gutters. Within seconds, independent fires have linked up. Soon, entire houses are in flames. Above them, clouds of smoke and ash bloom in harlequin colours, red, green, orange. Whole quarters of sky flare, then are sucked back into darkness. It feels to Esther as if she is staring up into a vast electric brain. And from the brain, little flaming sheets of paper and pillows and books and shingles rain slowly down over the city. "Oh, oh," whispers Miriam. "Beautiful, the most beautiful." In Ohio, seizures flow through Esther. Her arms stiffen, her head falls back. The seizures no longer seem to impair her consciousness so much as amplify it. Maybe, she tells Robert during her clearest moments, a person can experience an illness as a kind of health. Maybe not every disease is a deficit, a taking away. Maybe what's happening to her is an opening, a window, a migration. Robert nods uneasily. He brings her soup. He brings her triangles of toast. He tells his parents Esther is doing better. He tells them she is as indestructible as ever. In seizures, Esther watches Miriam walk the girls in groups through the abandoned city to the tall building with a radio mast on its roof. Their voices come to Esther in the bathroom, in bed, on the deck in full daylight. She sits very quietly. The leaves rustle. She hears the faintest scratch of a girl's voice riding along beneath the breeze. She hears a little girl say, "But it's not even hooked up." "I'll go," a third voice says, suddenly amplified. "Papa worked in a furniture store. We lit candles on Fridays, kept the Sabbath. Even after I was sent to Hirschfeld House, I thought everybody did the same. It wasn't until I saw the signs and asked Frau Cohen what they meant that I knew we were Jewish." Sometimes she sees the girls above her garden. They trudge up a long, switch-backed staircase, the youngest holding the hands of the oldest. They sit up on the 20th floor in the big square room, a quarter-mile above Esther's yard, taking their turns at the microphone, some of them lying down with their hands laced behind their heads, listening to the harbour wind streak through the broken windows, 100 feet above the treetops. Esther whispers their names into the darkness of the backyard. Ellen, Bela, Regina, Hannelore, Anita, Zita, Inga, Gerda, Else, Miriam. Robert is at her elbow. "Tell me about them," he says. "Anita Weiss had a lisp. She used to catch her tongue between her teeth. Zita could never keep the hair out of her eyes. Regina had a widow's peak. The other girls said she was mean, but I think she was always afraid. She didn't trust that anything could be permanent." "Who was your best friend?" "Miriam," Esther murmurs. "I loved her. She was older than me, just a few years younger than you are now." Robert's parents call from China. They plan to be home by the 5th of July. They want to know if Robert needs them home sooner. "It's not awful," says Robert, "being with her. It's sort of amazing, actually." He's quiet a while. His mother breathes on the other end. "But I don't know how much longer I can do it." That afternoon, he pulls a two-wheeled bike trailer made for children from the depths of his parents' garage. He straps seat cushions inside, mounts it behind his bicycle. In the evening, he helps Esther into the trailer and pulls her down their long street. That night they ride for a full hour, through the dusk and into the moonlight. Robert pedals hard and with great seriousness, and Esther feels the blood pumping through her. "Are you comfortable, Grandmom?" Robert asks, turning around, panting. "More than you know," Esther says. On July the 28th, the summons finally arrives for the Hirschfeld girls. The eagle and the cross on an envelope. No stamp, as if delivered from the office of God. Frau Cohen calls the girls from their various chores. They sit facing her while she unfolds her reading glasses. They are to travel on foot to a school gymnasium beside the Central Hotel. From there, a deportation agent will escort them to the Ludwigslust railway station. There are long, meticulous lists of what it is advisable to bring. There are directions for how everything should be labelled and conveyed. Each girl is given a deportation number. Where? Regina Goldschmidt finally gets the question out first. The girls lean closer to hear the reply. Several clamp their hands over their hearts. Frau Cohen flips through the papers. Warsaw. All afternoon the girls pack their things. Esther concentrates. Candles, shoe polish, night dress, arithmetic book. Underwear, birth certificate, thread. She thinks of Nancy Schwarzenberger sewing buttons. How old will Nancy be now? How exciting if they can manage to meet up with her. Auswanderung, the paths of the birds. At the other end of the attic, 9-year-old Hannelore Goldschmidt besieges Miriam with questions. Will there be school? What about gymnastics? What kind of animals will they have? Will we be allowed to go to the zoo? Miriam goes downstairs, helps Hannelore choose among her few possessions. Before supper, the girls carry their suitcases to the front door and leave them in a row with their tags bristling from the handles, all of it to be brought in wheelbarrows to the station in the morning. After prayers, Esther and Miriam climb the staircase to the attic and push open the trapdoor. They lie down beside the big white wardrobe. The attic beams tick in the heat. Spiders draw their webs between rafters. Warsaw can't be worse than this, Esther says. Miriam says nothing. Don't you think so? Miriam rolls onto her side. The only thing I've learned so far, Esther, she says, is that things can always get worse. Beside her friend in the attic that night, Esther slips into dreams, and when she comes back into herself, it is very late. A single light shines out the window. Someone is walking hunched through the furniture around her. The figure stoops in front of the girls' cots for a long moment. Watery breathing, cracking knees. Miriam sleeps. Dr. Rosenbaum. He looks thinner than ever in the gloom of the attic. Very quiet, he whispers. What's happening? Shh. She thinks. He came to say goodbye. In the morning, we're leaving, so he came to say goodbye to me. Your dress, he says, the coat, too. She pulls on stockings, laces her shoes. Miriam does not stir. Esther follows Dr. Rosenbaum down 5 flights of stairs, past sleeping children and muttering crones and doomed men, at last into the parlour, where he peers with all his attention through a gap in the curtains. Every time she tries to ask him something, he hushes her. Out in the street, the springs of a truck ring dully as its tires rattle across the cobbles. The curfew, Esther says, and Dr. Rosenbaum hisses, now, and hurries her out of the house and through the gate. The truck's headlights are not running, and Papendam is very dark. The truck's back swings open. Inside is a void, a blankness out of which scared faces slowly bloom. The truck bed is stuffed with people. Hurry, says Dr. Rosenbaum. But Miriam, cries Esther, my bag. Go, says Dr. Rosenbaum. and pushes her in. "11 murdered girls wake up on the floor of a tall, unremarkable row house. Esther wakes in her bed in Ohio, her grandson asleep down the hall on the couch. Frau Cohen wakes at number 30 Papendam in 1942, washes her face and pulls on her cleanest house dress. She laces her shoes, pauses on the threshold of the kitchen and sends up her requests to God. Please watch over us as we begin our journey. Please don't let me falter." Esther wakes in a cottage in the woods. The ceiling is low and the furniture is rough-hewn. Out the tiny windows, hundreds of birch trunks gleam bone-white against the dawn. In front of the cottage, Dr. Rosenbaum is asleep on a log bench without a blanket to cover him. She fears he is dead, but when she says his name, he opens his eyes. "What happened?" "You seized. We brought you here." "I don't remember." Birds flit here and there, crying thinly. The sky is colourless. "I should be with them," Esther whispers. "You're tired," Dr. Rosenbaum says. "This has been an ordeal." As if this were it, as if now it were over, Esther hears herself whisper to Miriam, years before, in the darkness of the dormitory, "I hope we are sent together." Dr. Rosenbaum smiles at her. "It's best to stay inside." She spends the day washing in and out of nightmares. Dr. Rosenbaum boils a pot of turnips. He sits with her and holds her hand. In the evening, he hands her a letter handwritten in English and an address in London. "When the truck comes back," he says, "I'll return to Hamburg." Esther's vision swims with fear. "No, please, Miriam and the others." Dr. Rosenbaum squeezes her hand between his two big, cold palms. "Where they are going, you do not want to go." Esther tries to compose a sensible protest. "Go live your life, Esther." An hour later, he's gone. She is picked up that night by a man with 6 other children riding in a trailer beneath a sheet of canvas. They ride together through the dawn. At mid-morning, the man hides them in a windowless, dirt-floored 7x7 cellar. They spend the next 36 hours there, a girl's hip pressed into Esther's shoulder, a young boy sniffling against her other side, the yelps of faraway dogs, and the long silences of nightfall and the rumbles of airplanes passing far above. Twice someone unlocks the door and pitches in a loaf of hard, dark bread and locks the door again. In that place, Esther's face is crammed up against a board, and in the board is a large dark knot. All through the daylight hours, she stares into that knot and sweats into her nicest dress until there is no longer any water in her to sweat out. Over and over, the words pass through Esther's mind. "I should be with them." The cellar smells of sweat, hunger, terror, and human waste. Twice Esther has grand mal seizures down there in the darkness. Her legs rattle against the slatted walls as the others try to hold her still. Someone's hand clamped over her mouth, someone else holding her on her side. She sees Miriam Ingrid Bergen riding a train, peering out a window, one of the younger girls in her lap. She sees a family waiting out in the darkness. After the second day, the children are smuggled to London on board a fishing boat with guns newly welded to its bow. She is taken to a clinic where a man in a doctor's coat gives her a set of second-hand clothes, a bottle of phenobarbital, and emigration papers for the United States. The Jewish Rescue Authority places Esther with a childless couple in New Jersey, coincidentally named the Rosenbaums. They are first-generation Romanian immigrants, and they live on a 2-bedroom houseboat. Esther writes Miriam every day. Mr. Rosenbaum bundles the letters in groups of 6 and mails them from the post office in Tom's River. Where they go, Who they reach, what hands dispose of them, Esther will never know. Stories of the camps trickle into the newspapers. They are all Mrs. Rosenbaum can talk about. Why, is the question Esther continually asks herself. Why did Dr. Rosenbaum save her? Why was she pulled out? Why not Hannelore, Regina, Else? Why not Miriam? She swallows a steady stream of anticonvulsants. She sells tickets at the movie theatre. She tries to believe that the world can be a reasonable place. But most days the silence of her cramped, chilly room on the Rosenbaum's boat overwhelms her. Lit an eerie blue from a pier light outside, no voices of children, no music, only distant foghorns and ropes chiming mournfully against masts, everything rocking back and forth. Memory becomes her enemy. Esther works on maintaining her attention only in the present. It is never warm enough. She buys spring dresses and quilted jackets and walks to the theatre on a hot day, but feels some deep chill within her. Esther is 26 and fluent in English when she meets the boy who will become her husband. He is small and gregarious and perpetually on the brink of loud and catching laughter. He meets her at the movie theatre. He is a hospital orderly, but he wants to be a bicyclist. He dreams of opening a bicycle shop. He sits her down on park benches and tells her about his plans. They'll go somewhere far away, they'll sell bikes, they'll repair them, they'll have a family. The contents of his plans are not nearly as important to Esther as their sound, the deep sureness of them. And his voice. He has a soft voice, a voice like a piece of silk you might remove from a drawer only very occasionally, something you'd want to run your hands over again and again. That she can be alive with this boy, share vanilla ice cream, stroll through markets, buy cabbages big as cannonballs, sometimes fills Esther with a paralyzing, breathtaking shame. She and the boyfriend move to Ohio. They get married. They get a loan. They start his bicycle shop. Esther works the cash register or opens her sketchpad on the glass counter and draws while her husband fiddles with a series of portable radios, a spectrum of American stations, country, jazz, folk, swing. They have a son. After school, he draws beside his mother at the counter, the two of them working on matching sheets of paper, and when he gets older, he works beside his father. Out, away, Auswanderung. Esther builds for herself as modest and normal and steady a life as she can manage. She is not allowed to drive a car, her medication continues to give her upset stomachs, and occasionally she is seized with wild, clutching feelings of dread. At times, her wrist throbs. She feels indistinct and wonders if she might have died in that cellar with the knothole, and considers the possibility that everything that has come after has been a dream. She reaches for her husband's shape in the night. She clings to him. It's Mrs. Rosenbaum, still living on her houseboat in New Jersey, who sends her the deportation manifest. Esther is 35 years old when it arrives. Inside the first envelope is a second, and Esther waits 2 days to open it. By then she has decided that she knows what it will say. She thinks the others will be there, but maybe Miriam will not. 40 cards. Several of them have hundreds of names on them. It is easy enough to find July the 29th, 1942. 12 birth dates, 12 girls. Miriam's name among them. Esther's too. All Esther can hear, as she sits on her deck on the last day of her life, is Miriam's voice. The backyard is grey at every hour. Robert is little more than a warm presence. At the edge of the city, we found a forest, Miriam's voice says, and we'll have to go all the way through the forest. And then, at the end, we'll climb a hill, and when we reach the top, down below is mist, Esther, a thick ribbon of it hiding the view. The vapors fall and condense and whirl around themselves, but sometimes they part for a moment, and down there in that valley I saw 1,000 tents, Esther, 10,000 maybe, each with a lamp burning inside it, all of them rustling and flapping in a breeze, a whole city of golden tents glowing down there beneath the mist. There is a pause. Then, we're going there, Esther, you and me, all of us. At dusk on the 4th of July, the woods echo with the explosions of neighbours' fireworks. Robert nails a Catherine wheel to a tree, and it sprays rainbows out into the night. Esther sits on the deck with a blanket around her legs and a dreamy, lost expression on her face. Whenever Robert asks if she is uncomfortable, it takes her a little while to reply that she is fine. At this very moment, his parents are 30,000 feet above the Pacific, 2 little girls asleep in the seats between them. The wheel spews a last paroxysm of sparks. The darkness reasserts itself. Robert clicks on a flashlight and rummages through his box for another firework. "What about one more, Grandmom? We've got tons of these." Esther doesn't reply. Robert says, "Okay, let's do a big one." He sets his lighter to a wick, and the wick burns down, and a rocket fizzes into the sky. Esther's gaze casts up through 1,000 leaves, a sea of them shifting against a flower of noiseless golden sparks. Which part of them is her, and which part is the rest of the world? She tips backward onto the lawn. The sparks fall through the sky. A locomotive stampedes through her head. When Esther wakes, it's night. She can feel the sanded planks of a floor beneath her knees, a windowsill beneath her fingernails. Out the window, clouds blow past stars. The more Esther looks, the more stars she sees. Somewhere below her, a little girl's voice is calling hello. Esther feels her way to the doorway. It is pitch dark in the hall, and old fear returns, rising in her chest, climbing her throat. She finds a stairwell. There is a wobbling banister. 1 flight, 2 flights. There's a bit more light on the first floor, starlight washing through curtainless windows. No furniture, no doors on the cupboards. Again she hears a voice calling from somewhere outside. Esther finds the front door. Beyond is a harbour wind and a sky swarming with infinitesimal lights. Standing in the belt-high thistles are 11 girls, their faces smears of white in the darkness. Miriam is easy to spot, the tallest of them, barefoot, regal in her tattered dress. She takes Esther by the hand and helps her climb down out of the doorway. "We've been waiting," Miriam says, and smiles a sweet-faced smile. Esther breathes. The wind settles. The 12 of them stand in the thistles, looking back for a moment at the empty house, crouched there in the night. Then they all start walking down the street.